Good morning. It's somewhat of a surreal experience for me to be standing on this stage today, and that's because it was on this very day, 1 year ago, at this memorial, that our 9/11 Heroes Day legislation was born. If you were here last year, you probably remember the keynote speaker, a retired New York City firefighter by the name of Lee Ielpi. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Lee this morning before we got started. He's here in the audience, right here. Thank you, Lee. Lee's son, Jonathan, was killed in those horrific terrorist attacks in Lower Manhattan. He was also a New York City firefighter. He's 29 years old when he died. And since then, Lee has dedicated his life to ensuring that we never forget the horrific events that occurred that day. Last year, I was in the audience when Lee challenged the leaders of our state to adopt statewide curriculum to teach students about the events of September 11th. Now, at the time, I was just a candidate. I was hoping to have the opportunity to represent North Pinellas County in the Florida House. But I left here determined to do everything in my power to ensure that every student in the Sunshine State learns about those horrible events and the impact that it had on our nation. Because like so many of you, I can remember exactly where I was that day. I can remember exactly what I was doing. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a brand new college kid living in a dorm at FSU, and my roommate had woken up just before me, and he tried to wake me up to tell me that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And the first thing that I saw when I opened my eyes was the live footage of Flight 175 crashing into the South Tower and exploding. I can still hear the words of that news reporter telling us, "We are under attack." Now, fast forward 22 years later, we now have a generation of kids who weren't alive that day. Many parents, many teachers, many first responders are too young to remember the events. We have a generation who won't understand the impact of what that happened that day unless we teach them. Many of you know I'm originally from northern New Jersey. I'm from a small commuter town just outside Manhattan. And where I lived, many of our friends and our neighbors, they worked in New York City every day. Where I lived, everyone knew someone that died in the terrorist attacks at the World Trade Center, and has countless stories of what I always called near misses. A family member who, for some reason, was late to work that day. Maybe they got stuck at a red light and they missed the ferry. Or they decided to stop at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts that morning to get coffee instead of getting in the break room like they did every single other day of the week. Or a friend who's a firefighter or a police officer who traded shifts with a buddy. And they didn't go to work that day. But their buddy didn't come home from work that day. Or a cousin who volunteered with the recovery efforts. And many of those people have since become sick and have died. In fact, that total now exceeds 25,000 individuals. So in that part of the country, many students are taught about the heroes of September 11th from firsthand accounts of American patriotism. And my goal for this legislation was to bring that same experience to every student here in the Sunshine State. But words can't express how humbled I am to stand on this stage today, just 1 year later, and be able to tell a crowd like this on the very first 9/11 Heroes Day, that today is the first day in our state's history that every student in middle school, every student in high school, is learning about that same American patriotism. And they're learning about the heroes that arose from the ashes from the worst terrorist attack in American history. And as it is with any other critically important topic, we can't rely solely on our education system to teach the next generation. So just like Lee challenged us, I challenge every parent here, every grandparent, every aunt, every uncle who has a firsthand account to share that story with a young person. Share your story with someone who's not old enough to remember. And I ask that you use that as an opportunity to pray for the families who were directly impacted by the events that day and the days after September 11th, 2001. Because for those of us who remember, it's our responsibility to ensure we never forget. May God bless our first responders, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.